She thought it was just another shift, another day, another customer. But one glance, one whisper, and suddenly she wasn't seen as a woman doing her job. She was marked as something else. The stares grew colder, the voices sharper, and the room that should have been safe turned into a cage. What happened next wasn't just humiliation, it was a reminder that for some, even breathing in the wrong place can be dangerous. But what did she do when the walls started closing in?
It started like any other morning. Maya tied her apron around her waist, humming softly as she tucked stray curls of hair behind her ear. She had been working at the small neighborhood cafe for almost 2 years, and though the pay wasn't much, she loved the rhythm of it. The hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of cups, the warm chatter of regulars. It was her little world, predictable and safe. Her coworkers knew her as the dependable one, the girl who always showed up on time, who remembered customers' favorite orders, who smiled even when she was exhausted. For Maya, the cafe was more than just a job. It was stability, a place where she could breathe, save a little money, and dream of something bigger. That morning, the sun poured through the wide glass windows, painting the floor with golden stripes. Maya wiped down tables, greeting Mr. Thompson, the old man who came in every day for his black coffee and crossword puzzle. She laughed when 2 college students argued over who had the better playlist. It felt like any other day, normal, ordinary, unremarkable. But sometimes the most ordinary mornings are the ones that shift into something unforgettable. Around noon, the cafe grew busier. The bell over the door chimed again and again as people shuffled in, escaping the heat outside. Maya moved quickly, balancing trays and steaming mugs, never letting her smile falter. She didn't notice right away when the atmosphere shifted, when a group at the back corner stopped laughing and started watching. At first, she thought nothing of it. She was used to curious glances, the kind people sometimes gave without even realizing. But these stares felt heavier, sharper. Every time she turned, the whispers seemed to hush, only to rise again when her back was turned. Still, Maya pushed it aside. She had a job to do. She told herself not to overthink it, not to let paranoia creep in. But in the pit of her stomach, something stirred, a quiet unease, the sense that something was different today. As she carried a tray across the room, she caught her reflection in the cafe's glass door. For a split second, she wondered if maybe her hair was messy or if she had a stain on her apron. But no, that wasn't it. This wasn't about something she had done. This was about who she was. And though she tried to shake it off, she couldn't ignore the weight of those eyes following her, stripping away her sense of safety. The cafe that had once been her haven now felt smaller, tighter. Maya didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something far bigger than a bad day at work. In just moments, the unspoken tension in the air would break open, and what happened inside that cafe would leave scars she would carry long after the day was done. The sound of the cafe was familiar. Clattering dishes, low chatter, the steady hum of the air conditioner. But beneath it all, Maya could hear something else, the muffled laughter from the corner table. It wasn't the carefree laughter she usually heard in this place. No, this was different, sharper, aimed. At first, she tried to ignore it. She balanced plates on her arm, forcing a smile as she delivered orders. But the whispers followed her like shadows. Every time she turned, the group of 4 at the back went silent, their eyes drilling into her. And every time she walked away, the laughter returned, louder this time, like they wanted her to know. Her chest tightened. She told herself to keep working, to breathe, to stay professional. But her hands betrayed her. A small tremor made the tray shake as she placed 2 cups of coffee in front of a couple near the window. She could feel her own pulse in her ears. Then came the first comment, low, just loud enough for her to hear as she passed. Surprised they let her kind serve food here.
Her steps faltered. The words cut quick, like glass pressed against her skin. She kept walking, her jaw tight, pretending she hadn't heard it. Maybe if she ignored it, it would end. Maybe if she stayed silent, they'd get bored and stop. The silence never stopped people like that. The next time she passed, another voice followed. Bet she messes up the order. Can't trust them to get it right. This time, the laughter was open, deliberate. A few heads turned, curious, unsure of what was happening. Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks, her stomach twisting in knots. She wanted to vanish into the back room, to disappear into the steam and clatter of the kitchen. But she couldn't. It was her shift, her responsibility. She forced her feet to move, one step, then another. Her hands gripped the tray tighter than necessary, her nails digging into the wood. But then, the moment that made the air snap. As she placed a sandwich on their table, one of the men leaned forward, his smirk wide, his voice dripping with mockery. "Careful, sweetheart, don't drop it. Wouldn't want your dirty hands on my food." The laughter that followed was louder now, crueler. It wasn't just aimed at her, it was designed to humiliate, to strip her dignity in front of everyone. For a moment, the cafe seemed to freeze. The chatter dulled, the clinking of cups paused. A few customers glanced at her with sympathy. Others looked away, uncomfortable, pretending not to notice. No one spoke up. No one intervened. Maya stood frozen, the plate still in her hand, her throat dry. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the words stuck, caught somewhere between rage and fear. She felt small, like the ground beneath her had vanished. Finally, she managed to whisper, "Enjoy your meal." Her voice was steady, but inside, she was breaking. She turned quickly, retreating to the counter, her eyes stinging. She wouldn't cry here, not in front of them. But the group wasn't done. Minutes later, she heard one of them call out, loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. "Hey, we need a refill over here, unless you're too busy. What, you tired already? Thought you people were used to hard work." The words cracked like a whip. A few people gasped softly. Still, no one moved. The room was filled with silence and complicity, the kind that screamed louder than the insults themselves. Maya's chest heaved. Her hands trembled so badly she almost dropped the coffee pot as she poured coffee in front of a couple near the window. Every step toward that table felt heavier. Every second a battle between holding it together and shattering completely. She placed the pot on the table, careful not to meet their eyes. One of them leaned closer, his tone mocking yet sharp. "Smile for us, girl. You're prettier when you smile." That was it. The moment the air changed. She couldn't hold it in any longer. Her hand clenched around the handle of the pot, her knuckles white. She wanted to scream, to tell them to stop, to throw the hot coffee in their smug faces. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, rage boiling just beneath her skin. But then, she saw the cafe manager standing near the counter, arms crossed, watching. His expression wasn't one of concern for her, it was one of warning. She knew that look, the unspoken rule: don't cause a scene, don't upset the customers. Her rage twisted into something heavier, helplessness. Even if she spoke up, even if she defended herself, she wasn't sure anyone would stand with her. In this room, she was outnumbered. The group laughed again, proud of their cruelty. To them, she was entertainment. And yet, something inside her shifted. As she turned away, her eyes landed on a little girl sitting with her mother at the far corner of the cafe. The child had been watching, wide-eyed, clutching her spoon tightly. Maya saw the confusion in the girl's eyes, the way she was trying to understand why the adults were laughing, why the nice waitress looked so hurt. In that instant, Maya realized something. Her silence wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every set of young eyes watching, learning what was allowed, what was tolerated. Her heart pounded harder. She returned behind the counter, setting the coffee pot down with a sharp clink. The tremor in her hands hadn't stopped, but now it wasn't just fear coursing through her. It was anger, controlled, focused. The group called out again, mocking, waiting for her to return. She didn't move, not yet. She was thinking, weighing, deciding. The cafe felt smaller now, every breath tight in her chest. But in her silence, something else was brewing, a decision that would either cost her everything or give her back her power. She glanced once more at the manager, then at the group. The laughter echoed, filling every corner of the room. Maya's jaw tightened. She knew she couldn't let this continue. Not today, not in front of that little girl. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides, and as she took a slow breath, she made her choice. What happened next would silence the cafe and expose just how fragile the idea of normal
had turned into
really
a dull roar.
was.
Every laugh, every whisper, every scrape of a chair felt like it was directed at her. The group in the corner leaned back in their seats, smug, confident, waiting for her to return so they could sharpen their next insult. But this time, she didn't walk back to them. She stayed behind the counter, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the storm building inside her. Her chest heaved as she stared at the manager who stood with his arms crossed, his message clear: "Don't make trouble. Keep your head down." Her eyes flicked again to the little girl in the corner, wide, innocent eyes that had witnessed everything. Maya knew she couldn't stay silent, not this time. She drew in a shaky breath, then straightened her back. She picked up the tray again, but this time her steps were different, steadier, louder. Each one echoed in her chest like a drumbeat. When she reached the corner table, the man with the smirk leaned forward. "Well, look who finally decided to show up. Thought maybe you'd run off." The others chuckled, their voices dripping with amusement. But Maya didn't flinch. She set the tray down carefully, her eyes locked on his. Her voice came out low, controlled, but every word carried weight. "You don't get to talk to me like that." The laughter stopped. His smirk faltered, replaced with a flicker of surprise. The cafe went quiet, too quiet. Everyone was listening now. He leaned back, feigning amusement, but his eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Maya said, louder this time. Her hands still trembling, but she kept her gaze steady. "I came here to work, to serve coffee, not to be disrespected, not to be humiliated in front of a room full of people who don't have the courage to say a word." A gasp rippled through the cafe. Some customers lowered their heads, others stared, wide-eyed. The man's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being challenged. He leaned in, his voice sharp, dripping venom. "Watch your mouth, girl. You don't want to make this worse for yourself." Maya felt the sting of that word, girl. It wasn't casual. It was meant to put her in her place, to remind her of the box he wanted her to stay in. For a second, fear surged through her, but then she remembered the little girl's eyes, the weight of silence, the way no one had spoken up for her. Her voice cracked but held firm. "No. The only one making this worse is you." The room held its breath. The man's face darkened, anger flashing across his features. He slammed his hand on the table, making cups rattle. "You think anyone's gonna believe you? Look around. Nobody cares. You're nothing here." The words hit hard, but Maya didn't back down. Her throat burned, her heart raced, but she stood her ground. And then another voice broke the silence. "Enough!" It was soft, trembling, but clear. The little girl's mother had stood up, her hand gently resting on her daughter's shoulder. She looked at the group, then at Maya. "She's right. We all saw what you did." The group shifted uneasily. The man's smirk returned, though thinner now, forced. "Oh, so now we've got heroes in here, huh?" But before he could say more, another voice joined in. From the old man who came in every morning for his coffee. His voice cracked with age, but it carried strength. "She works hard, harder than anyone in this place. You don't get to treat her like that." A murmur spread through the cafe. One by one, people raised their heads, their eyes no longer avoiding, their silence breaking. Maya felt tears sting her eyes, not from weakness, but from the sudden rush of something she hadn't expected. Solidarity. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't alone. But the man wasn't done. His pride burned too hot, his anger too sharp. He stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. He towered over her, his face inches from hers. "You don't belong here," he hissed. Maya's heart pounded. Fear clawed at her, but she refused to step back. She raised her chin, her voice steady. "I do, and I'm not leaving." For a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of them, his rage and her defiance colliding in the center of the room. And then, without warning, he shoved the tray from her hands. Cups crashed to the floor, shattering, coffee spilling across the tiles like dark blood. The sound ripped through the cafe, sharp and violent. Gasps echoed. Someone shouted. The little girl whimpered, burying her face in her mother's side. Maya's hand shook, but she didn't bend to pick up the pieces. She didn't break. She stood tall, her chest rising and falling, her eyes locked on his. The man's hand twitched at his side like he was deciding whether to do more. The tension was unbearable, the air thick with the possibility of something far worse. The manager finally stepped forward, his face pale. But his words weren't what Maya expected. "Maya, go to the back. I'll handle this." Her stomach dropped. She knew what that meant. Don't make trouble. Don't fight back. Hide. But Maya didn't move. Not this time. Not after everything. She wiped her hands on her apron, her voice steady as she said, "No. You need to handle them." The manager froze, caught between his fear of losing business and the truth hanging in the air. The group muttered, their bravado wavering as the room turned against them. But the man in front of Maya still glared, his fists clenched, his pride refusing to let go. The silence stretched, unbearable. One wrong move, one more word, and the moment could explode into something irreversible.
The silence in the cafe stretched, heavy and unbearable. Maya's heart pounded in her chest, every breath sharp and shallow. She stood rooted to the floor, broken cups and spilled coffee at her feet, the man's glare still locked on her like a weapon. For a moment, it felt like time itself was holding its breath. And then, slowly, something shifted. The mother with the low girl spoke again, her voice trembling but determined. "She doesn't deserve this. None of this. If you can't see that, then the problem isn't her, it's you." Her words cracked the air like lightning. A few customers nodded, others murmured in agreement. The old man at his table cleared his throat, his voice steady despite his years. "You've done enough. Leave her alone." The weight of the room turned. The group of men who had been so loud, so confident, suddenly looked smaller, their smirks slipping into unease. The man in front of Maya clenched his fists, but he could feel it too. The tide had shifted. He wasn't in control anymore. The manager finally spoke, his tone firmer than before. "I think it's best you leave." The man scoffed, muttered under his breath, but he knew the battle was lost. With one last glare at Maya, he shoved his chair back and stormed out, his friends trailing behind him. The door slammed shut, the echo reverberating through the cafe. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was Maya's shaky breathing, the faint clink of a spoon against porcelain. Then, slowly, the room exhaled.
The little girl peeked out from behind her mother's arm, her eyes wide and shining. Maya caught her gaze, and for the first time all day, she allowed herself a small, trembling smile. She wasn't unscathed. Her hands still shook, her heart still ached, but she was standing. She hadn't been silenced. That moment would stay with her forever, not just because of the cruelty she endured, but because of what it revealed. The way silence can enable hate. The way one voice, however small, can spark others to rise. Maya finished her shift in a blur, each movement mechanical, her body moving but her mind replaying the confrontation again and again. By the time she walked home, the evening air cool against her skin, the adrenaline had faded, leaving exhaustion in its place. But beneath the exhaustion was something else, something stronger. Resolve. She knew the story didn't end when those men left. The truth was, what happened inside that cafe wasn't rare, it wasn't new, and it wasn't just about her. Because for every Maya, there are countless others, people humiliated in stores, stopped on the street for no reason, judged, mocked, or threatened, simply for existing in their own skin. Stories that never make the news, stories silenced before they're told. And that's the weight of racism. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the corner of a cafe. Sometimes it hides behind a joke, a stare, a single word meant to wound. And every time silence follows, it grows stronger. Maya thought about that little girl, about what she saw, what she learned in that moment. And Maya realized something painful, but powerful. Silence teaches too. It teaches children that cruelty can be tolerated, that some people's dignity is optional, that injustice is just part of the background noise. But when someone speaks up, when someone breaks that silence, even a single voice, it changes everything. It changes the story a child will tell themselves about right and wrong. It reminds everyone watching that hate does not get the final word. Maya would carry that day with her like a scar. There would be nights when she replayed the insults, the laughter, the sting of humiliation. But she would also remember the voices that rose when she needed them most. The mother who refused to look away, the old man who chose truth over comfort, the child who bore witness. That was the paradox of it all. Pain and hope, wound and healing, breaking and rising, all living inside the same story. And isn't that what racism does? It tries to break, to silence, to erase. But history has shown us that even in the darkest moments, voices rise, people stand, and the story refuses to die. Maya's story isn't just hers, it's part of something larger. It belongs to every person who has ever been told they don't belong, to every worker humiliated in silence, to every child who has seen injustice and wondered if anyone would ever stop it. And that's the impact, the truth we can't escape. Racism isn't just a single insult, a single shove, a single laugh in a cafe. It's a system, a shadow that stretches far beyond one room, one town, one life. And the only way it changes is when silence breaks, when people speak, when they act, when they refuse to look away. Maya didn't become a hero that day. She was just a woman who refused to bend, who chose to stand when the easier choice was to walk away. But maybe that's the point. Maybe change doesn't always come from grand gestures or powerful leaders. Maybe it begins with ordinary people in ordinary places, refusing to let hate have the last word. So the question lingers, What would you have done if you were there? Would you have looked away, stayed silent, or would you have been the voice that made the difference? Because racism doesn't survive on hate alone, it survives on silence. And silence is a choice. Maya's life didn't magically transform after that day. The world didn't suddenly become fairer, but she carried herself differently. She walked taller, her voice steadier, her presence sharper. She knew she had faced the storm and had not been erased. And she knew that somewhere in that cafe, a little girl had learned that courage is louder than cruelty. And that might be enough to change the next story. This wasn't just Maya's story. It's the story of millions repeated in schools, stores, workplaces, and streets across the world. The details change, but the message is the same. Racism is real, it is relentless, and it leaves scars. But silence is not the answer. So I'll leave you with this. How many more times must this story be told before we finally choose to change it?